Anish. People before profit. Solidarity. Deputy Richard Boyd-Barrett. Three Nomad.
Taoiseach, I think the problem is you don't really seem to understand that the cost of living crisis we're facing is in fact an emergency. Just like we had a housing emergency, which you finally reluctantly had to accept existed, you need to accept this is an emergency. Working people, pensioners, the least well off are being absolutely crucified by the stratospheric increase in the cost of accommodation and rents, energy prices, and now all sorts of other costs of living rising. And what absolutely infuriates me is that the government pretends like this is like the weather. It's not really to do with us. It's got something to do with international pressures. It's not our responsibility, and we can't really do anything about it. Now, I want to inject something that hasn't been said in this debate, is that there are winners in all of this, and that's what needs to be addressed. You see, inflation should actually be renamed price gouging and profiteering, because the reason rents go up is because landlords increase rents to unaffordable levels. The reason energy prices go up is because energy supply companies increase the cost of those energies, and they are making a lot of money out of it. So the heating misery, the housing misery that ordinary people are suffering is actually benefiting certain groups of people, particularly corporate interests. Globally, BP and Shell have seen their profits jump to 40 billion last year. Shell's profits have quadrupled in 1 year. In 1 year, they have gone up by 400%. But that's not just an international phenomenon, it's happening here. The ESB has seen its profits jump. 616 million profits in 2020. For just one half of the year last year, 356 million in profits. In other words, set to go over 700 million. Energia have seen their profits jump by 46% last year, 45% the year before, and they're paying dividends to their shareholders. 30 million in dividends. So there are winners and there are losers. The same happens with rents. Rents in this country have gone up by 61% in the last decade. Rents in the rest of Europe have gone up as well, but only by 14%. So you are allowing the landlords to cream it on the back of the housing misery of ordinary working people. That's the reality. And that is never spoken about. The rental income of Iris REIT, the biggest landlord in this country, has increased to 24.7 million last year. Their rental income is up by 6%, up to 30 million euro. So while rents go absolutely stratospheric, completely unaffordable for working people, 2,000 euro on average in Dublin, 1,500 on average for a one-bedroom apartment, 2,200 in my area for 2 bedrooms. These people are creaming it, and you allow it to happen. And in fact, you have no problem with their profits going through the roof, but then when workers say, oh, we'd like our minimum wage increased, oh, you've got a big problem with that. We can't put it up to $12.90. We can't put it up to 15 as we proposed in the Dáil this week. No, we couldn't do that, but no problem with their profits going through the roof. So I ask you, why don't you change your priorities away from protecting the profiteering of energy companies and landlords to support an increase in the minimum wage to a living wage, and to control the rents that are being charged by landlords and cut them, and to control the prices of energy and cut those prices using the powers available to you.
You gained an extra minute from a malfunctioning carrot. You did, actually. You actually gained. You're one of the winners today. Tarnish them.
Thanks very much, Deputy. The Low Pay Commission was established back in 2016. Was by the Labour Party and Fine Gael. You're welcome. You're welcome. It's a statement of fact. It's also a statement of fact, what I said earlier, but you're not willing to accept those facts. But certainly in 2016, the Labour Party and Fine Gael together established the Low Pay Commission. Since then, the national minimum wage has increased by 26%. Inflation has increased by 7%. So while you're talking and speechifying and demanding increases in the national minimum wage, we've actually done it, and we've increased the minimum wage ahead of inflation since 2016. I appreciate this year, we don't know yet, we don't know what inflation will be yet for this year. I appreciate this year that may not turn out to be the case, and that's why we need to take other actions. But the facts are, since the Low Pay Commission was established in 2016, the minimum wage has gone up 26%, the cost of living has gone up by 7%. That's a real increase in real terms. We have the second highest minimum wage in the developed world. When you adjust for the higher cost of living in Ireland, it's the sixth highest. And median wages in Ireland are 36% higher than the European average, despite claims of others that somehow the reverse is the case. But once again, to emphasise this, the issue of rising costs and the cost of living is very much on the mind of everyone in government. There's a competition here in this House, sometimes led by the opposition, sometimes led by TDs of all parties, to make out that X person understands things more than Y person. That's nonsense. We're all elected by our communities, we all have constituents, we all have constituency clinics and constituency offices, and the exact same people are saying to you what they're saying to me, that they've noticed a huge increase in the cost of filling the car with petrol or diesel, that they're shocked when they see the gas bill or the electricity bill, that they're noticing prices rising in the supermarket, and they're worried that it's going to keep rising. That's the biggest worry in many ways, that prices may continue to rise. That's why we had a €1 billion cost of living package in the budget, which only kicked in January. That's why we're going to make further decisions today to help people, all households, with their energy bills, but also some targeted measures for those in the lowest incomes who need that help the most. So while you're speaking and preaching, we're actually taking action.
The minimum wage in this country gives people just over €400 a week. Do you honestly believe that that is adequate to meet the costs of living? That's a joke. Now, maybe you're going to surprise me and say that the minimum wage is going to be increased to €12.90, the living wage, or even better, what we're proposing, €15. But I know you're not going to say that, and I know you're not going to do it. But at the same time, you have no problem, you have nothing to say about the profiteering of the landlords and of the energy companies. No response on that point. You don't have a problem with it, right? So why don't you focus on that? How is it acceptable that energy companies are seeing major rises in profits, that landlords are making absolutely stratospheric profits on the backs of the housing misery and the heating misery of ordinary people, and why will you refuse to act? The French have just brought in new rent controls to have maximum prices on rent. You could do the same. Why don't you do it? Because it would affect the profits of landlords. Why won't you use the powers you have under the Consumer Act to control the price of heating and energy?
To respond.
Thanks very much, Deputy. You mentioned companies like BP, you mentioned companies like Shell. They are international companies. That they are not companies that are based here, and they're not companies in the round that are taxed here. But it does show that this is an international problem. The main driver of inflation is the rise in gas and oil prices, which is affecting us here, and then of course drives up the cost of other things as well. So the main drivers are international. That's the underlying cause, but we have to treat the symptoms of that by helping people with their family budgets. On ESB, I do not believe that the ESB should make hyper profits or bumper profits this year, and we have a mechanism for dealing with that. The ESB is a state-owned company. It pays us a dividend every year, a substantial dividend. We can take a larger dividend, so it's not the case that they can just run up huge profits and put them in a bank account somewhere. We're the shareholder. We take a substantial dividend from the ESB. If they run up huge profits this year, we can take a bigger dividend, and we can use that to help pay for some of the measures that we're announcing today.